everybody, and welcome back. My name is Austin Kaufman, and this will be the third episode of my podcast series. Today is a Saturday and is the first day of the 2024 NBA playoffs. In today's episode, I will give you guys my full rundown on the first round of both the Eastern Conference and Western Conference playoffs. Briefly, though, I would like to talk a little bit about the play-in tournament before I talk about the playoffs. In the play-in tournament, there were 8 teams featured, either in a 2-win scenario or a 1-win scenario to enter the NBA playoffs. But a few teams, like the Warriors, man, it just does feel weird that we may not see some guys on the Warriors anymore, like especially Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. Steph Curry would be a very big stretch. We're not sure if that could happen. But in the Warriors' probably last game, maybe as a team together, Klay Thompson shot 0 for 10 from the field in maybe his Warriors exit. And it just really feels weird. But I had a thought about it, and the Warriors aren't going to do as good as you think they are every year. They're not going to go to the finals every year. They're not going to win every game in the playoffs every year. They're going to struggle. They're going to have breaking points, which it's going to happen with every team sometime. But since they're all veterans, there's not much to look forward about that. And it may just be best for them to give up some guys or either bring in a few guys. So I'd like to say a few things about bringing in players. Now, I don't think they have a chance of making the finals again in a 3-year stretch. They definitely could if they keep Steph around for the rest of his career. But they'd have to make a really big trade, and they probably have to give up their young pieces like Pods and Jonathan Kuminga to get a player in return, because nobody wants Klay Thompson. He's an old veteran. He barely can pretty much run the court. He's old, and he's on a huge contract. So he tried to re-sign with the Warriors a few years ago for low money, but declined it and needed more. Now, there's not really anything that could go right for him. And Draymond Green, no team is going to value him as much as the Warriors did, so he's going to take on a less role. But, the Warriors could try to get the piece that they need, somebody that can create a shot, give Steph Curry a break, because Steph's getting older, so he's not going to be used as more. So they got to find a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands so much. And a guy that came to mind for me was Lauri Markkanen. There have been so many Lauri Markkanen trades ever since he joined the Jazz. But no team has kind of been able to figure out, does he work or does he not? And when I was really thinking about it, I just don't think he really works. And I don't think the Warriors have that deal. That's just a thought that comes to mind. And that's just a brief talk about the Warriors' future. I'd also like to now talk about a different team in the play-in, which is the Miami Heat, which could experience the playoffs with no Jimmy Butler, which is a very big killer for them. If you didn't know the Heat, they went to the finals last year. They were the 8th seed. They beat everybody, and they were pretty much unstoppable, and Jimmy Butler was a beast, and that's who they rely on in the playoffs. So with no Jimmy Butler, it's going to be a struggle for the Heat, but I wouldn't doubt Jimmy Butler to not return just yet. This man's going to put his body on the line if he needs to, and I think it's a possible thing that could happen is Jimmy Butler returns and the Heat can maybe try to win a game out of the first 3 against the Celtics, and then maybe Jimmy Butler can return, but that's also, like I've been saying, a big stretch. So the Heat, they've got to find a guy that they can go to that's going to be strong in the playoffs. They play the Celtics in the first round. They had a chance against the Sixers. They were up about 15 at halftime. And, Nick Batum, probably out of his best game in about 5 years, hit 6 threes. And it's just a bad way to lose a game. You don't want to lose a game that way. And now it gave the Sixers the Knicks, which is much easier of an opponent, not as much easier than the Celtics, but I wouldn't count out the Knicks, especially the way they've been playing in games, the way Jalen Brunson has been playing. So the Heat, there was really no best option. Of course, the Knicks would have been the better option to play the first round, but getting the Celtics in the first round with no Jimmy Butler is going to be very hard. But, the Heat could still try to show us something. They could still try to win a game. Maybe Jimmy can return, but they've got to start probably doing more in that regular season to make a easier playoff run, avoid the playing more often. Now I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into the NBA playoffs. First, I'm going to start in the Eastern Conference side of things. The 1-8 game, which is the Boston Celtics and Miami Heat. My prediction for that game is the Celtics will win this series in 5 games. They may have some up and downs in the fourth quarter. Like I said, I wouldn't doubt the Heat. But if something happens and they lose another guy, they're going to be done for. The Celtics, as we know, I said this in my last podcast, they're going to turn on to a different level. They're going to be a better team than they have all year. Joe Mazzulla might have something hiding from us that we don't know of. Maybe they could just be that team. Maybe Jason Tatum could give us some 40-point games. And when they play together, they're going to be dangerous. Though the Celtics do have a struggle with the fourth quarter like we've seen sometimes this year. So they can't give up those comebacks. If they don't, they'll be just fine in the playoffs. Now I'd like to talk about the 2-seeded New York Knicks taking on the 7-seeded Philadelphia 76ers. I have the Knicks winning this in 7 games. The Sixers may look as good as they are, but when they're playing together and they can get that defense to a different level, and Jalen Brunson, like he has been in these past games, giving 40-point games all over the place. He seems to be the best player currently in the NBA, and that's going into the playoffs on the New York Knicks. That's going to help. And when we see Tom Thibodeau being like, got to play these guys 40 minutes a night, 45 minutes a night of Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart and Miles McBride, Jalen Brunson is just going to be there, and he's just going to do his thing, and he's going to start scoring, and the Sixers aren't going to be able to stop him. Embiid might be himself. He could do his best to. The Sixers haven't lost in a while, but when they're not on the same page and they're turning the ball over, they kind of lose energy and they lose hope. And they've got to stay at the same consistent level the entire game to keep the Knicks in that level. The Knicks, they do stay. They don't fall when they're down 15. They stay at their same pace and they slowly cut into your lead, which the Sixers, they can do that as well. But if they are struggling before on turnovers, not missed shots, it's going to be even harder for them. The next game, the 3-seeded Milwaukee Bucks playing the 6-seeded Indiana Pacers. I have the Bucks in 6 for this matchup. The Pacers are probably going to win, maybe game 1 or possibly game 2 if there's no Giannis. They've kind of proved it this year, going 4-1 against the Bucks, but they haven't played since January 3rd. Bucks haven't played Pascal Siakam. The last time these two teams met, Giannis had 64 points. And I've kind of seen maybe a little new rivalry forming. Also, the NBA All-Star Game was in Indiana, and Damian Lillard won MVP and a 3-point contest. We've seen fights with a stolen ball game. So this will be a very fun series. It's going to mean a lot for the Bucks if Giannis doesn't return. Though we do need to see Damian Lillard try to be himself, maybe get that 3 working, because if he's not consistent in those first few games, they're going to have a tough time trying to get through the Pacers. The Bucks, like we've seen, they've struggled to even defend one player on the court. Not one guy on the Bucks can defend another guy on the team. And the Pacers are second best in offensive rating this year. So if the Bucks are lacking defensively, they're going to lose this game. If they show us a little hope defensively and Dame does his thing and Giannis has a good, smooth return, healthy return, they're going to be able to win this series, and that's what I think is going to happen. Pacers are going to steal a few games that the Bucks probably should have won, but the Bucks do their thing. They're going to pull out this win. It's just Milwaukee Bucks. Even though they've been struggling, I've seen them before. They can do this. Next, in the 4-5 game, I have the Orlando Magic beating the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games. The Magic, as the season went on, they became better. They became more of a well-rounded team. And the Cavs have kind of decreased, while the Magic have increased in their playing statistics. So the Cavaliers, if they're not on that same page and they're trying to do their thing, they're going to lose. And they struggle. The Magic, they're going to have the intensity. The Cavs, they don't play with much intensity. They're kind of a little bit walking around. They try to find threes and alley-oops with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. But when that doesn't connect, they're just going to struggle. And I think the Magic are going to come out more prepared, with more to fight for than the Cavs. And I just think that the Cavs, when they realize who the Magic really are, can't win this series. Now we're going to move on to possibly like a little bit more of an interesting few playoff games in the Western Conference. First, I'd like to start off with the 1-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder playing the 8-seeded New Orleans Pelicans. This is going to be my pick, and you better watch out because I think the Pelicans are going to beat the Thunder in 6 games. I just don't think that the Thunder are on that level yet, and when the Pelicans, they get Zion back. Zion had 40 points in his last outing in that playing game, and he kind of looked unstoppable. So he hasn't been to a playoffs yet. If he can prove he's a real deal, they're going to be a team you're going to watch out for. And the Thunder, they're going to do their thing. But I just think when the Pelicans, and it comes to that moment, and they've got to get work done, they're going to come out with the win. And they're going to steal a game. They're going to steal game 1, and then they're going to probably steal like game 5 from the Thunder. This series I do think is going to go to 7 games. But the Pelicans, they're going to steal a few games, and they're going to win all their games at home. They win all their games at home and steal 1 away, they're going to win this series. If they can't do that, then they're going to lose this series. But I think they can do that. They have that mentality to do that. And Zion's going to be hungry, and when he does that, he's going to feast on those young Oklahoma City Thunder, the unexperienced players on that team. They're gonna do their best. They're an 8 seed, but they had struggle in the play-in. They're gonna be back though. They're gonna be ready. When Zion's back, you better watch out because he's gonna come in with full speed, and he's gonna do everything he can to get that Pelicans a win. The next game, the 2-seeded Denver Nuggets taking on the 7-seeded Los Angeles Lakers, a rematch of the Western Conference Finals last year in the playoffs, where the Nuggets won that series in 4 games. I think the Nuggets are going to be even better of a team, and they're just going to cruise to the Lakers in 4 games. They're going to win all 4. I just don't know how you can really stop the Nuggets right now on how they're playing. They didn't get the 1 seed, which of course they wanted, but the 2 seed, which they ended up with, they were okay with it. And I feel like they're a little bit better of a team than they were last year. They're kind of getting better. Jamal Murray's gotten better, and Jokic is just doing his thing. So when they're together and they're playing, they're going to cruise through the Lakers, and they're not going to have a stop. The Lakers can't stop them. And I do need to see a lot of Anthony Davis to possibly shift the series, but I do think Jokic is too much, and AD is going to struggle, and that's going to just be how that playoffs go. The next game, which is the 3-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves playing the 6-seeded Phoenix Suns, can be an interesting series, and I think it can be a scary one at some times. But I do think the Timberwolves are going to be ready. I said this last podcast where the Timberwolves defense is on point, and defense is what matters in the playoffs. So when they have Rudy Gobert taking on all these great bigs, the Suns, they don't exactly have one, but if they do want one, they're going to have to win a few games. When Rudy Gobert is protecting the rim, it's very hard to get by him. Karl Anthony Towns is back, which is going to help even more. Anthony Edwards is going to be him, and they're going to have great wing defenders. They're going to do their best to play each guy with what matters most. They're going to try to separate. They may try to separate some of Phoenix's role players a little bit more. They may put a bigger responsibility on Grayson Allen, who usually gets the worst defender on him. And they may try to force a few more shots from Devin Booker. If Devin Booker is clicking and he is consistent, they're going to, of course, try to double, but then you got to limit KD's shots and you got to limit Bradley Beal's shots. So they're a tough team to stop overall, but the possessions that are going to matter most are the possessions where you've given up a few buckets and then you got to go and score one, which I think the Timberwolves do best out of any team in the NBA, and I think the Suns do worst out of not every team, but most playoff teams. So it's going to be a fun battle, but like I said, defense is what matters. So when the Timberwolves come out with their defensive scheme and then they have their offensive guys do their thing, I don't think the Suns are going to have a stop for them, and they're not going to have something good to go to offensively. That's going to be my series, and I think the Timberwolves will win this series and move on to the next round. The final few games, which I think will be such an interesting series. We kind of knew it as the season came to an end. We knew it a few games before. The Los Angeles Clippers will play the Dallas Mavericks. Who knows really what the Clippers could do? They got James Harden like 10 games into the season, and they've kind of found a big role in Russell Westbrook. They have a Sixth Man of the Year candidate, Norman Powell, and then they have Paul George and they have Kawhi Leonard, who are outstanding players, and maybe they could show us something else when they're in the playoffs and when they play together, and they're going to be dangerous. But we have yet to see the Mavericks and Kyrie Irving play a playoff series. So Luka and Kyrie have not played a playoff game together in their career together, but maybe Kyrie can show us something. The Mavericks were finished as the 12th seed last year. They were 11th seed. They completely missed the playoffs, and they can be back this year. Luka is possibly an MVP candidate, and he possibly can win it. And I think that they're going to find the holes in the D where Luka is going to do his thing, and he's going to try to stop the Clippers from doing really anything defensively to guard him. The Clippers have, slowly, gotten a little bit worse, and they're kind of not doing their thing. They kind of had a very good month of January. Got a few injuries from Westbrook and Kawhi Leonard. Leonard will be playing, but when that happened, they kind of just went to Paul George, and Paul George was just doing their entire offense. That can't happen in the playoffs. They got to get every guy going. They got to move the ball. They got to cut to the basket. And Ty Lue has said it multiple times. We need to play together. They can't be standing in the corner. We all need to be on the same page. We all need to cut. We all need to move without the ball, set screens, do all that. That's how the Clippers are going to win. But when they're not doing that and they realize that, they're going to find themselves down 10 points. And then the Mavericks are going to do their thing with Luka and Kyrie, and they're going to pull out this series in 6 games. That will be it for today's podcast. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I will not be posting another one tomorrow. I will post one after all the games end in round 1. So I do hope we get some interesting games. First game today is the Magic and the Cleveland Cavaliers starting at 1 o'clock Eastern time. So hopefully you guys can watch that. But, I can't wait, and I hope we have a great playoffs. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I can't wait to see you guys next time.